nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, approval of agenda. Anybody have any changes or additions? Not here. I have a couple. Oh, go
We're
ahead.
going to delete K.
Which one?
K.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If it's okay with everybody else, I'd like to move L9 up after L1, so these guys don't have to sit here all night and listen to them. And then also we're going to need a closed session at the end of the meeting. So I'd like to add closed session.
With those changes, I would move approval of the agenda.
Second?
Yes.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes. Anybody that'd like recognition of the board, you can come up and introduce yourself. No? Thank you. Public comments? Anything from Samuel Teachers Association?
Do I need a microphone or? Well, we don't have one.
Speak loudly.
I'm big mouth, so I can hear it. First, after many years of wanting to have formalized participation at board meetings, we are just absolutely thrilled to see that we will be on the agenda and we'll be able to come and relax. We probably won't every time, but which is good. It's kind of like when you're riding with a driver you trust and you feel comfortable, you just go ahead and doze off in the back seat for a little while. So if we're not here, and we also, of course, have these great videos to watch. So I would just want to thank you, though, for allowing us to participate in such a formalized way. We really appreciate that. And the other issue that was really on the teachers' minds, and I heard a lot about, was they're very relieved to see that we're going to pass a safe haven resolution. People have been very concerned about that. Our students are very worried and concerned, and so I think that goes a long way in easing people's minds. And so, thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. Have a good evening.
Is there anybody from CSEA there? No? Okay, there were no actions taken in closed session. Actions taken during student matters. We had one expulsion and
I'd like to make a motion. I move that student number 021417-009 be expelled, but that we suspend the expulsion and that student be subject to searches.
I would second that.
Yes.
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 yes. Yeah, I messed up. Skipped public comments. I guess we do have a couple comments. So, Bill.
Evelyn Morrow?
No microphone, right? I use my dinner projection voice, right? Well, thank you very much. Evelyn Murrow, community member. It is my understanding that the process for selecting a new superintendent is well underway, and I, as a community member, cannot stand by and not make my point of view public. As you all know, the Board of Trustees has one employee and one employee only. Since 1996, San Benito High School District has struggled to find its way. I'm not speaking about facilities or bonds or competitive salaries and benefits or positive relations with staff. I'm speaking of academic progress. Over these years, the district has not had consistent superintendent leadership to address mediocre and lagging academic performance. Having worked in human resources for 19 years and having interviewed I don't know how many individuals and conducted how many reference checks and read how many recommendations and reviewed how many performance tasks, I know how difficult it is to determine the best candidate through these processes. Interviews, recommendations, references, and performance tasks can only provide a small insight into the chances the best candidate is selected. The best evaluation is job performance over time. After an abrupt departure of its principal, San Benito High School Board of Trustees appointed Mr. Adrian Ramirez for the principalship. Mr. Ramirez was not interviewed. Mr. Ramirez's job performance was the best criteria for making such appointment. Unfortunately, the board has not applied the same selection criteria for the present superintendent position. There is a clear mixed message. Mr. Ramirez, we believed in. Mr. Tannenbaum, we're not sure about you. I can hear that's not true, but perception does become reality. Mr. Tannenbaum is the most qualified candidate for the superintendent position, given his work over the years in this district, from teacher to interim superintendent to HR director to coach. I believe you have the right person sitting by your side to lead the district in all areas, including moving towards higher academic performance. Sometimes the best deals are underneath our noses, and we are unable to recognize them. Hopefully, the district isn't wasting the time of prospective candidates in order to appear to be sincerely looking for a superintendent who would be a better fit. The performance of an outside candidate will be unknown until at least several years has passed. Recently, the district has struggled to find its way academically. The losers, the students. The district got it right when Principal Ramirez was appointed. The district got it wrong when they decided to open up the superintendent position. Right now, San Benito High School District's in a holding pattern. Who knows who will lead? And will that leader have the support of its employer, the Board of Trustees? Another year of disrupted district leadership, with the consequence of lost educational opportunities for the students and the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you.
Monica Rodriguez.
I'm here again to complain about selling track uniforms. 2 years ago, I brought it to the board's attention that the students were required to buy track uniforms. Last year, I came to the board to let you know that once again it was happening. I'm here to file an AB 1574 complaint with the school and the district. I'm submitting copies of the education equity funding for athletes that states athletic programs supported by public funds provide equal opportunity for participation. Education Law 49010B, pupil fee, requires educational activities to be provided free of charge to all pupils without regard to their family's ability or their willingness to pay fees or request special waivers. Education Law 49011-1, all supplies, materials, equipment, units, participation will be provided free of charge. 2, a fee waiver policy shall not make a fee permissible. 3, school districts and schools shall not establish a two-tier educational system by requiring a minimal educational standard and also allowing a second standard that pupils may only obtain through payment of a fee or purchase of additional supplies that the school district or the school does not provide. 4, CDE Athletic Bill of Rights. Athletes have the right to receive equitable treatment and benefits. Last year, I asked for students to be reimbursed for track uniforms for that year and the previous year. I was not informed if any students were reimbursed. I was told last year the students could pick up a uniform through a box of discarded uniforms for those students that could not or would not pay to buy a newer or more expensive uniform. Apparently, no district employees were concerned that selling uniforms creates a class system because they are being sold again. Legislators shouldn't have to repeatedly fine-tune laws so that the schools and districts do not purposely ignore and circumvent providing a free public education for its children. San Benito High School and its district cannot sell athletic competition uniforms to its athletic teams. Thank you.
Ray Rodriguez?
Good evening, trustees. I don't know if Monica provided it to you, but I just texted all the trustee meeting because I don't have your cell phone, a picture of the uniform order form. It will cost more than $100 for a student to outfit themselves with basic necessities, just to let you know. The Supreme Court ruled decades ago that extracurricular activities were an integral part of the public education system, and they were a right of our students. Unfortunately, my wife and myself identified this problem to the district in 2002 and have identified it probably every year since. I've tried to work within the system, I've tried to work with the system, I've tried to work every way but around the system, which is what the district is doing right now. I know that some people would say, we started with transportation fees, and they say that would break athletics, but transportation fees have been found specifically to be illegal in court cases as well. This has become such a prevalent problem that Congress our state Congress in 2013 modified the state law and clarified it, and if you'll look on that complaint form that is part of that law, it specifically says what athletics in your public education system are charging and what are they charging for, because it is illegal. You're creating a class system. Last year, the year before, we'll talk about track, but every sport is doing it. The track coach came up here and said, well, if the kids can't afford it, they can pull a box of dirty old uniforms or choose from within a box of dirty old uniforms. So track brags about the number of students that can participate, which is great. But what about that one kid who doesn't want to ask for help? That one kid that doesn't want to wear torn uniforms when everyone has shiny uniforms? Isn't that the one kid that we're supposed to be worried about? Most of the other kids that can afford these shiny uniforms, they'll succeed in school. They don't need athletics to get up in the morning and say that, you know, track is why I'm going to school. So lastly, I'll ask you, for decades, this school, this district, us trustees and these trustees have ignored state law. What would happen to a student who ignored school rules? Should we hold the students to any lower standard than we hold ourselves? Is the bar lower for us, or is it higher? I would encourage this board to look at this, to rectify the situation with track immediately, with all athletics, and not let this drag on for another couple of decades. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it?
I'll send it to you.
Okay. We're going to go on to our reports and discussions. First on the agenda is our student board report.
Board of Trustees, I want to take a minute here to introduce our newly appointed student representative to the board, Adnan Chavez. Adnan will be giving the report, but just want to tell you a little bit about Adnan. Adnan's a senior at our high school who started here at the beginning of this year. Anyone that wants to hear his story, feel free to come and ask me. I've got a lot of good stories about Adnan, but Adnan has established himself as a leader on our campus, and being the student board rep is one of many things that he's done, not just on our campus, but out in the community, to extend himself, to better himself, and to become a leader. But first time I met Adnan was at a speech contest at the Rotary, for Rotary last year, and I took a team of probably 10 very polished students who all had previous experience in speech and debate. Adnan came, he was the only student from his school, and I regrettably assumed that he would be outmatched. So anybody that attended Rotary, I know trustee Tiffany was there that day. Well, Adnan definitely earned the respect of everyone and won that contest. So anyway, without further ado, your newly student board rep, Adnan Chavez.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I just want to first and foremost say thank you for having me, and it's a really cool experience to be here. So I'm going to start with the first one. So for the old concerns, we have all those right here, and we have the responses on the bottom. So for when will hot chocolate start being sold? Hot chocolate hot chocolate being sold was communicated and will be getting started up. Feminine products in the restrooms. Feminine products in the restrooms are being discussed, and we'll have a final answer next meeting. How do I go down on this one?
You just
Can I go down?
Down arrow.
they can see.
No,
No, it's not. Let's get it off of the bottom.
we can see it.
They have it.
We can see it.
Okay, should I just skip to the next one, or?
Yeah, go ahead and keep reading.
we had it.
Okay, so for the new concerns, students want information on all weather track, having administration updates for students on construction, more veggie options overall in the cafeteria, check expiration dates on the food served, install hand dryers in the boys' restroom, more covered areas for students to hang out when it rains, red carts on all campuses, and clean water fountains. Any questions on the new
So,
system?
Adnan, if you go to the new concerns, on the 28th of February, the trustees will be taking a look at developing their project list, and I'll be able to come with trustee Robledo. Last time we met with the ASB, we'll be happy to share that information with the ASB and the officers once the board sets their project list.
Are food being sold with expired dates?
I'm not sure. That was just kind of a question to ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be something we would follow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any more questions? And so for the feeder school assembly, we went on January 25th, 26th, and 10th, 27th to our three largest feeder schools. We started on Wednesday, the 25th, at Spring Grove School, which included Southside and Trespino School. Then on the 26th, we went to Mays Middle School, which included HDLA and AAA and Calaveras. On the 27th, we presented to our biggest group, Rancho San Justo, and ASB talked about our sports, academics, and clubs on campus. ASB also had a skit and speech about making the right choices in high school. We also had performances from our band, freshmen, and varsity cheer, and our dance team velocity. And here are some pictures. So for winter homecoming, it was this Saturday, or last Saturday, right? Yeah. So the theme was The Great Gatsby, and and the homecoming basketball game was on December 10th. And I think that all happened. So the Queen and King were already crowned. And so for our beneficiary, Bernardino Galleta, we've already managed to fundraise about $10,000 for him, so we're more than halfway. And so, update on the benefit drive so far, ASB has raised more than that. We've raised about $10,000, and our goal is $18,000. We have done 3 restaurant days: Doña Estel's, Domino's, Pizza, and Running Rooster. We have also done 4 door-to-doors and plan on doing 2 more. We also have our murder mystery night coming up on March 31st.
Today I got the news that in, 6 minutes at the rallies, they raised $1,100, just from the student body. That was amazing. That's why I accepted $10,000. That's amazing. You should probably put out a bulletin if you can, congratulating them. You know, that's really amazing. I was there. I put in $1.50. That's all the change I had.
Any more questions on this?
Have you, I know you're new to this, but this is some advice, but just so that you and ASB will know what's going on with the other clubs and organizations on campus, there is a form that board members, student board reps used to have, and they send it out to all the staff if there's anything you'd like to report on, because there might be something that FFA is doing, or the Pokemon Club, or something like that. And it's probably a good thing for you to send it out and find out what's going on. Also good for ASB. Yeah, because the stuff that ASB does is big and it's huge, but there's so much out there, it's unbelievable. You couldn't cover it all unless you get some help from the staff.
Yeah, okay. We'll get on it. And so for our upcoming events, we have our benefit drive door-to-door on March 4th and March 18th, our ASB convention on March 7th, and MORC will be on March 11th. Any questions on any of that?
Do you know how many candidates are running for ASB?
No, I'm not sure, but I think Ms. Lemos has encouraged everybody who can to.
And the reason I'm asking is I thought she might have told you, because again, I heard the news today.
Yeah.
They have enough candidates to do the convention, because many people think that conventions are automatic. They're not if you don't have candidates. It's like having any situation. The president is running unopposed, but everybody else has, the reason for the convention is to bring the number of candidates down to 2 so you don't have a runoff election. Because runoff elections are a lot of work. Yeah. So anyway, I'm very happy that you guys got enough candidates.
Yeah, I'm not really sure the exact number, but.
And then on MORP, in case some of you don't know it, it's prom spelled backwards, and you know that there's some traditions there. Could you report on those traditions next time and see how they went?
Yeah, definitely.
There'll be some interesting activities coming up, because those girls know how to ask those guys out to the dance, and it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, we're going to jump to L9, which is the district debt presentation.
Janet Mueller from DWK, and, sorry, Bruce Kern from Stiefel. This is our financing team. They're the ones that understand all this complicated process, and Jeff is going to do a presentation to explain the debt process to us.
Good evening, members of the board. It's good to be here. Jeff Small, Capital PFG. And I also have my colleagues here who are happy to speak on any legal issues that arise or bond marketing questions. I know you're familiar with them. Your community has been very successful, and I want to just do a very quick review. The purpose of the review is really, we're going to be returning to you on February 28th to approve a resolution and some other documents to issue the remaining Measure G bonds of $12.5 million, plus an issuance of not to exceed $17 million on the recently passed Measure U. So rather than just coming to you with these documents to approve, we just wanted to give you a heads up as to what to expect on February 28th. Also at that meeting, the board will be asked to approve a debt policy, which is on your agenda in L10. And just a brief moment on that. The debt policy, it's really all about annual transparency of the district's debt. It's required by law. The policy that is in the item is essentially the CSBA policy that's been just custom tailored to reflect the needs of the district. You're going to have excellent facilities. You've got the best educators, ton of local support. Really congratulate you on that, to be able to pass 2 bond measures. And we know when you put all these things together, you're going to have very, very highly qualified and educated students. Back on January 24th, there was a presentation on your bond measure project for primarily Measure U, but here's your Measure G projects, approximately $40 million, doing extremely well there, and the Measure U projects that were talked about on January 24th. And I would just defer to those presentations regarding the update on those projects. But just as a brief review, when you think about the bonds, again, it's really just a loan, very similar to a home mortgage. With the general obligation bond, it's repaid by an ad valorem tax that's levied on all taxable property in the district. It was approved by 55% of the voters. The bond proceeds could be spent on real property and equipment. And once the bonds are approved by the voters and bonds are actually issued, that's when the taxes are levied to repay those bonds. And the calculation to repay them, it's really very straightforward. You have debt service, you divide it by the assessed value multiplied by $100,000. And they do that throughout your tax base. And for a union school district, which is defined as either an elementary district or a high school district, that maximum tax rate limitation is $30 per 100,000. It's a little bit higher for a unified district at $60 and lower actually for a community college district. But very important when you issue the bonds, you want to maximize your proceeds, you want to minimize your costs, and certainly have those bonds reflect the facilities improvement plan that the district has spent a lot of time and effort to develop, and I really congratulate you on that. But the actual bond issue themselves, it's a combination of the timing of how money is spent, how much your projects are, what the desired repayment term is. We're looking at a repayment term of not to exceed 30 years here, and of course your board policies and bond issuance parameters. And again, you have a debt policy, and what we're presenting is in keeping with that policy as well as all the legal requirements. When you issue bonds and how much, it's really just a matter of how fast and how much money you're going to expect. District is being very, very conscientious of not issuing too many bonds too early, because by being very careful with the amount and timing of the issuance, we're able to minimize the interest costs that are repaid by the taxpayers, and also deliver a bond program that's going to be flexible enough to adjust to what your facility plan needs are. The bond plan assumption itself is based on a number of different elements. One, it's the assessed value growth. last 5 years, the district has a very good assessed value growth. It really is a signal that the economy has really turned around. We're assuming a 4% increase in assessed valuation for 17-18, 18-19. For now, 2.5% year after, but this bond plan is going to allow you to come back and relook at that future growth rate and actually increase it based on how assessed value is doing in 2 years. Interest rates, I mean, they're still very low. We have an assumption of 4.5% for this 2017 issuance and 5% thereafter. I said before, a term no longer than 30 years. And again, very important to keep that tax rate limit of $30 per $100,000 per bond measure. So it's $30 for Measure G, $30 for Measure U when all bonds are issued. Going pretty quick, I don't, if any time anybody has any questions, just let me know.
I have a question on that one.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then, with 60 million and 30 is the cap, that's as far as we go, will we still put that 30, is that still possible to put that 30 year?
It's going to depend largely on the assessed value growth. So we need to have good assessed value growth for that to happen. So, and what you have here is you have a slide on page 15, and it shows the assessed value growth. And I want to state that, boy, there was a lot of growth in the district's assessed value between 2000 and 2007, and the district was doing fantastic. There was the moratorium, and of course we had the recession, and unfortunately the assessed value has fallen, but I think the last 5 years has been a very good indicator of how your economy is rebounded with 5% annual growth rate. And also, I know that this area will receive a lot more new growth, and that'll be important to being able to come back and relook at that assessed value assumption. But we want to be conservative today because frankly we can be. It really is going to be very important in 2019 when we come back to that second issuance for Measure U. So the Measure G issue that will be before you on February 28th is for a $12.5 million bond. It will extinguish the Measure G authorization. Again, tax rates of under $30. You can see the tax rate attributable to the 2015 issue in blue, 2017 in yellow. And then you can see the debt service. And if you'll notice, in 2017, that debt service is front-loaded, and then it escalates up at about 2.5%. The 2017 bonds, we're just going to layer the $12.5 million over that. And again, in keeping with the prior slide, maintaining that $30 per 100,000 tax rate. And again, I just to say that I think that's very conservative because that assumes a 2.5% escalation in tax in the assessed value, and clearly we're doing very well in that. For the new Measure U, we're looking at a $17 million debt issuance. Again, by 2015, we're able to accelerate debt service really early on for 2 years. And then you can see it drops off. By accelerating the debt service up front and by having debt service what we call level, it's basically saving about $1.4 million to the taxpayers. And I think the district would be extremely proud of that.
So accelerate means you're making payments earlier.
We're making big payments earlier because we have that $30 tax rate threshold. And we want to leave room after that to come in and drop the future issuances to get your full $60 million. Of course, again, the bond issuances are sold in order to match the timing and expenditure funds. And I know there's only so many construction projects a school district can possibly handle at one time, even though we'd love to have everything done now. But believe me, the construction is more difficult than issuing the bonds. This graph on slide 19 just illustrates in another way how we're maxing up that tax rate, allowing plenty of room for the remaining Measure U bonds to come into play. Like I said before, this team before you is going to return on February 28th. At that point, you'll have the opportunity to approve the debt policy. That's your first reading tonight on L10. also approve a resolution authorizing the issuance or approve an official statement and in terms of a bond purchase agreement with Stiefel, Bruce Hearns. Bruce is going to work his magic on March 29th and bring the lowest possible interest rates he possibly can to the district. And then finally, Roseanne, I think you will be relieved on April 19th when you have more money to spend on school facilities. So if you have any legal questions, I know Janet is here, and Mark, any questions about the bond, Bruce is here, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I'd like to commend, first of all, the fact that we have 2 ex-board members here, but I want to say again that it was a good thing to do to go for the bond when we were deciding that, and that we now have the resources to continue. Thank you. And they're here, my friend.
Any questions from the board? Yes, that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next item then is PTSA results. PSAT results.
Hello again, and good evening. So what you have in your packet is a comprehensive report of both our PSAT 8-9 and our PSAT. There's a lot of initials here, acronyms, and the PSAT and MSQT. So I wanted to first ask the board how they wanted me to present. I know it's one of the reasons why we made sure we provided a comprehensive report for the PSAT is because our district has made a pretty notable investment, monetary investment, in being able to provide this last fall all of our 9th graders the opportunity to take the PSAT 8-9, which I can go through as far as describing what that does and how we would use that information. That's baseline data for us this year, as it's the first time we've done that. And then the PSAT and MSQT is what, since last year, this is the 2nd year, so now we have some trend data and some comparable data to look at as far as how our 10th graders. And so this past fall, we gave each of those grade levels the opportunity to take them. That's a participation rate that's unheard of across the state or the country. So I can go through some of these slides to kind of talk to you a little bit about what this test is, what it does, and why it's important to us.
Can you refresh my memory on when we approved spending $10,000 for this test and $17,000 for the other?
Yeah, so last school year, the approval was for all 10th graders to take it, and then for all 10th graders to take the PSAT and MSQT, and then this school year, beginning of this, I think it may have been late June or early in August, we went ahead and did that piece for the PSAT and 8th and 9th. I'm not sure whether it came to the board, but that's how it would go.
I don't recall voting for that, but I want to congratulate whoever voted for it, because it does give us a higher percentage than the state and the nation on participation, but it doesn't do a lot for getting our math scores up there. But it's still, it's nice to be able to.
Yeah, it is an outside marker that we definitely believe in looking at, because part of what we're doing here is looking at college readiness indicators. And so many of the aspects of the PSAT are very aligned with what we have going on with the SBAC and the structure of the SBAC. So as we look into the future, we should really be taking a look at how these scores compare with how our students are performing on the SBAC. But anyhow, the PSAT 8-9 establishes it's a baseline measurement for college readiness for both 8th and 9th graders. We use it for our 9th graders. Both include an opportunity for students to preview the SAT. So a lot of the purpose of this is exposure, so that students, when they go and take the SAT, which most students take for their first time at the end of their junior year, that it's not the first time that they've been exposed to this exam. And the SAT, as you know, is one of the college entrance exams. exams. The SAT is most widely used in the western part of the United States, and the ACT is actually a more widely used, we use it here also on the West Coast, but it's exclusively and widely used on the East Coast more than the SAT. So we see a trend here of many of our students actually taking both, a little bit more of both. The SAT wasn't as common. It is now for us here on the West Coast. The difference here with what NMSQT stands for this test is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. And so any 11th grader also has the opportunity to take the PSAT, and depending on how they score, they can qualify for a National Merit Scholarship. So that's the difference there. They're not the same test. They're both modified for each grade level. Each test is based on standards for the grade level it's targeted. So it's specifically designed at each grade level to give you an indication of whether or not a student is on track to be college ready. And we'll talk a little bit about what they mean by that. Another key component, and we'll talk a little bit about the follow-up, is now when a student takes we've gotten the test results, and our counseling team will be meeting with the students to walk them through how to connect to Khan Academy. So a student, once they get the results, they'll get an access code, which they automatically put into Khan Academy, and that access code is connected with Khan Academy, and it will give them a customized lesson based upon their strengths and their weaknesses. And then the other piece through the PSAT, it also gives them an indication of what courses they would most likely be successful in taking at an advanced, an AP class. So those are some of the features. So there's, what does it measure? So both of the tests, both versions measure two major areas. So there's evidence-based reading and writing. And then there's the math test. If you look at the description, this is a very similar language, very similar design as how our SBAC through our CASP system. And so it is aligned with our Common Core standards, and it also is aligned with the framework in which it's looking at the level of complexity. I know that we've come before you and talking about the depth of knowledge and the rigor involved in some of the questions and some of the performance tasks. So what we're seeing with the PSAT is there's a very parallel between how our 11th graders are being assessed with the SBAC and then how the PSAT is being designed along with the SAT. So there's some comparisons we can do there. But math is very focused on the heart of algebra, problem solving, data analysis, and it also has some other upper level math courses to see where kids are at as far as their advanced levels. So grade level benchmarks. So what the results do is they give you grade level benchmarks, and what they do is they tell us whether or not a student is, just like any assessment that we've had that's come through, any standardized assessment, it gives us a percentage of our students that are either proficient or on track, right, for college readiness. And the way the PSAT interprets that is they're saying that if a student meets this benchmark or exceeds the benchmark at that grade level, what they're saying is that student is likely to be able to earn a C or better in a college level course in that subject. And so that's the interpretation that they're giving us as far as college readiness for our students. So again, there's the math and the evidence-based reading and writing, and where they set that benchmark is that if they meet the benchmark, then they're saying there's a 70% chance of earning at least a C or better first semester in a college level course. So those are the kind of indicators that they're giving us. So who pays for the test and how much does it cost? Just to kind of give you some. So in 2015, as I said, the normal fee for taking the PSAT is $15 on either version of the test. We're fortunate to be part of the South County Council Consortium that we have how would I say this, a collaborative with College Board who gives this test, and so we get definitely a discounted rate, especially with the high volume of test takers that we have. So last year we invested slightly under $10,000 for all of our 10th graders to take this test, and then this year we invested approximately $17,000 for all of our 9th and 10th graders to have the opportunity to take this test. And so 11th graders can also take it, and it is offered to them at a discounted price. I believe it was $11 that an 11th grader can take it. So we have a full-blown administration.
So So you charge 11th graders, but not 9th and 10th graders?
Yeah, correct. So what the most important thing is, what are we doing with the results, right? So we're having students, we're having hundreds, more than hundreds, and I'll show you some of the data here that describes the participation rate we have at our school. But the important thing is, what are we doing with the results? So 9th graders, our counseling team will be meeting with students. They already have, within our counseling action plan, as soon as the 9th grade, our counselors meet with students one-on-one, do a career planning piece, right? And so one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to integrate these PSAT results, which through the website and through the resources, give our counselors some good resources to help guide our students, especially now that our 9th grade class that we have right now is the first class that will fall under the A through G graduation requirements. Our 10th graders, our counseling team will be going to classrooms to help that will also help them interpret results. And as we plan on continuing to do this, I know Assistant Principal Grissom and I have been talking about how to most effectively be able to work with our students and make sure that we use this data to help them. Because it doesn't do us any good if we're just taking the test and not doing anything with the information. So each student will receive a copy of their results. Results will be imported into our student information system, just like the SAT does, so a student can have a comprehensive record of how they're doing and their parents. And then overall school reports will be shared. You know, obviously, as I am today, we would share overall school reports so that you can see the progress of how our students are performing as a whole and with our faculty. So we'll share this report with our faculty to also provide them another sort of perspective in terms of how our students are doing. And again, and then the other piece in terms of the parents is this will be information that will be integrated into our parent evening meetings with those 2 grade levels.
Would that be starting this year or next year?
Starting next year, yeah. Although Assistant Principal Grissom and I have been talking about what we can do this year to make sure we get, because with the number of students that we have participating, there's a lot of real easy basic information that we can relay to parents as far as helping them, as far as when they're planning courses with their students in the future, and then just making post-secondary plans and really being able to identify an area of growth for each student, whether it be within math or ELA.
What time of the year is this test taken?
It's in October, and so the College Board establishes the school-wide administrative date. The PSAT is given throughout the entire year, just like the SAT is, and any student can take it. You know, a student from Samuel High School can take it in San Jose and Gilroy. But the format in which we do it, where we do it school-wide, is done once a year. So once we know that date, we put that on the calendar, and we basically revolve our college and career day, where we do an activity with each grade level based on that date that we get.
Because my only concern would be is you're testing in October for standards that are for their grade level. It's October. They haven't even been taught half the stuff they need to do. Therefore, they're going to perform well below because they haven't even been schooled in it. So what's the reality of taking it in October as opposed to not taking it semi like a STAR test toward the end of the year or the SBAC?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'm glad you asked that. So part of it for the PSAT 8-9 is it also is giving us an indicator of where the PSAT is telling us our students should be starting with us. As you see, it's an 8-9 test, so it does give us an indication. It's also designed to give us sort of a baseline measurement of where they are compared to where they should be coming in. And so we need to be very strategic on how we use that information.
But then as a 10th grader, you've got your baseline, but then again, as your 10th grader, you're taking it early again. So where's the benefits of?
Well, each test is designed to measure, so it does consider the timing of it, the timing of the test. So it does consider where they're at and what in terms of the grade level. So the test is designed so they know that the student is taking, for example, a PSAT. Because it's both 10th and 11th graders. And so our 11th graders, it would apply better for them in terms of that piece. But for the 10th graders, it's really giving more of a baseline for them. And a lot of it is really about exposure for them before they go and take it either at the beginning or the end of their junior year. Yeah. So as far as baseline data, so in terms of participation, I just wanted to point out a couple things. And so the national, excuse me.
Hey, Adrian, can you
Yes.
back up a second? I'm a little bit confused. So, did you just say that they give a different, the test that we administer in October is a different test than would be administered, say, in April? Is that what you
No,
said?
it's not. It's not a different test. What I'm saying is the timing, you do have to consider the timing because at the beginning of the year, what it does, like what's the benefit is what trustee, like why would you do this? And what it would do for our students is create a baseline for them.
And so when we're comparing our results against the state and national, when were those tests taken?
Throughout, for the same day.
Can I jump in here real fast?
I was gonna say, 'cause it doesn't look
So,
good.
yeah, with regards to the test and testing day, the test is indeed designed to be taken in the beginning of that year. So it's not, you're not really comparing, oh, some ninth graders take it at the beginning, some take it at the end. I just kind of jumped in and looked at that really quick on the website. It is set up in that fashion, so it's being compared to itself that fall administration day.
Okay, so these results we're seeing are our fall and test day versus.
Yes, I was comparing apples to apples on here, yeah.
Okay.
College board. So I wanted to point that out. So our national average, our national participation rate is 40%. So
I
across
think
the,
that's phenomenal.
yeah, 40% of students in high school, right, and it is the 40% for the PSAT 8-9 and 32 in the state. So for Samuel High School, it's 88. Okay, so that's a pretty high percentage. That's unheard of across the state. So another thing to point out is that within our SPED population, all resource and some identified special day class students participate in taking the exam.
Amazing.
This is a trend that's not seen across the state or the nation. And then within our English learner population, all ELD4, all ELD3, and some identified ELD2 students participate in taking the exam. And so what we do is we work with our special education teachers, case managers, and we also work with our EL program to identify the students that they feel it's appropriate for them to take the test and ready to be initially exposed to take the test. So there's that participation rate for 8 and 9. And I'm not sure if you want me to go through every slide. As you can see,
No, we were able to.
okay. And so as you can see, as a summary, we did expect that we would be below both the state and national averages. Number one, because we know that it's not a trend seen across the nation or the state that we're exposing both our special education students with learning disabilities and also our English language learners to the test. So that piece is not comparing apples to apples. So that's a big difference there.
Do
And
you
then,
believe that's part of the reason we're at 20% and not at 25?
I believe that's part of the reason. Now, if you were to ask me if we were comparing apples to apples, what would I think? Well, our SBAC data does compare apples to apples. And this exam, this assessment is very similar. Not exactly the same, but it's very similar in terms of what it's assessing. And so based on our SBAC, we are below, in ELA, we actually, we saw that we were above the average, but in math, we weren't. So some of the same trends are being reflected, not all. And so really, as far as like, how would I do this in the future, is we'd really be looking at how they both compare and what's the difference between both assessments. Because continuing to compare to the state and national average, we wouldn't be comparing the same, because it's not a trend that we see. The participation rate, as you'll see with our 10th graders, is we had a 90% participation rate this year, which grew 5% from 85% participation last year. So nearly all of our students have an opportunity to take the assessment.
Does it behoove us, because I saw the freshmen performed, okay, not as great as the sophomores, I don't want to say worse, but not as great, but does it behoove us to start going down to the middle school area around 8th grade teachers and kind of giving them a heads up of what we need to do, a vertical conversation of like, what can you guys do to help prepare these kids to come in a little bit better instead of just waiting for them to come with what they got?
Yeah, I absolutely think it would benefit us. In fact, the PSAT, the data that it gives us ties it to specific targets and specific standards. So there's a piece that it'll provide us where it gives us specific information tied to standards. Title Common Core standards. And so there's some opportunities and some potential to get down to even that kind of detail with not just our staff, but our feeder school system.
So, Trustee Nimi, I think one of the things that you mentioned is extremely important for this county is that articulation with all of our feeder schools for any results to be dramatic at our level needs to occur across all districts. And that would be in the areas of curriculum, and we've had this discussion in mathematics. For us to be able to address that at the high school level is one single aspect of a child's K-12 career. But to have the same curriculum taught and students being well-versed in the same type of language, whether that's Springboard, etc., so that students are matriculating to the high school, they understand our expectations by grade level, we understand what they're producing, and we're using common curriculum to help drive that, would have results in this particular area.
And are you being met with openness regarding this vertical, or are you getting met with?
Yeah, I think, it's a really good question. It's, it's a bit unknown for me at this point, but I do know that the conversations that I've had with the San Diego County Office of Education, and I'll just give you a snippet in regards to the math consortium. There is a countywide math consortium that is occurring. So my first question is, what is the purpose of the math consortium? And what is the end result of the math consortium? And how are we going to measure whether or not the math consortium is effective over a period of time? So I know they are meeting, and I'm catching up quickly on that, but I think that the first step is there's actually something happening. The second step is what is actually happening during those meetings to drive the type of academic integrity and the academic performance that we would like to see at our level. And so I'll continue to be there, and I know Director Krokower has been there on our behalf.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question.
So the rest are all the different, you got a comprehensive report with data disaggregated by ethnicity. Again, the PSAT 8-9 is the baseline. This is our first year. The PSAT 10 had a 2-year trend from our total group compared to the state and the national average. And then the other data that you have in there is a disaggregated look by ethnicity, and then a disaggregated look by gender. So there's other ways, and so as you go through the College Board website, it's, I could be there. I could have provided you with a 60-page report, but we'll form it as we go. But if there's any questions, board pleasure.
Thank you.
I didn't want to go through each data.
No,
Does anybody have any questions on it? Good job, baby.
Thank you very much for the information.
Excellent.
Eye-opening, thank you.
Okay, the next one is the College and Career Grant Readiness Grant.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. This item comes back to you. Originally came to the Board of Trustees on January 10th for consideration and discussion. It comes back tonight for adoption. The College Readiness Block Grant funds are one-time funds to increase student success in attending and completing four-year college. These one-time funds are about $240,000. We brought to you on January 10th the plan to supplement our LCAP. In those areas, looking at an additional AVID teacher to help grow that program for our middle-of-the-road students looking to be college bound. Financial support for our AP exams, getting more students participating there. And then, of course, mathematics, one of the areas to continue to support mathematics is some intensive professional development that we've begun to work on. So this item comes for adoption, or I'll answer any questions you may have.
On this AVID teacher, once the funds are out, if we don't reapply, that means that person gets another class to teach, or they get laid off,
or we would find another way to fund that position. So the AVID program is currently growing. This year we have 9th and 10th graders, and we want to grow that each year until we have 4 years of AVID. Of course, we'll be constantly assessing our AVID program to make sure it's successful for students. And I know that Assistant Principal Krokower will be back later this spring with a full AVID report.
So right now there's no plans to add another FTE or 2 or 3 or 4 to keep this going on?
There is a number of sections, yes. So to answer your question, if we were to add 3 sections, we're at 0.6 FTE or 4 sections, and our analysis will come after Assistant Principal Krokower dissects those numbers, but we're anticipating somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 0.6 to 0.8 FTE at this particular junction.
So for right now, with this grant, we're good till 2019. And then we'll have to
And we'll have to reassess.
Good question.
Can I get any more questions or a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
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 Yeah. Yes. Okay, next one is, what's a strategic plan and why?
Okay, good evening, trustees. So I thought it was a good opportunity tonight to kind of share a little bit about what we've been working on. And I want to commend the administrative team for doing a fantastic job of really working over the last, I would say, 8 weeks to put together a template to guide our academic success. And so I've been reaching out to superintendents across the state, looking at other districts' models. And the first question I had to ask myself is, you know, if we really want to have true academic success, then we need to have a plan. And what is our plan going to look like? And it can't be a one-year plan, but it needs to be a multi-year plan that brings all facets of the school district together for our students, because that's why we're all here. In taking a look at the, I messed up the wrong, did it go? No.
I don't think it's
It's not working? Just use the arrow. All right, let's see if I can get this right here. Sorry about that. Okay, so in taking a look at the format for this evening, and I know you've read through your report, is definitely what is a strategic plan and why, our starting point in academic priorities. The question that we have to ask all of ourselves is, how do you see yourself in the plan? We all have a role in this plan. The trustees, to myself as the interim superintendent, administrators, our students in the audience, our parents, classified support staff, we all have a role in the plan. And then ultimately our commitment and what we want to commit forward is we'll ask for your understanding and support throughout the process. This is going to be a fluid process. It's not concrete in nature. It's not going to be static. It can't be static because we need to constantly be in motion to achieve success. Taking a look at what we're trying to achieve, and if you really look at, we're in 16-17 at the bottom left hand of the road here, kind of meandering through to 1920. And when we sat down as administrative team, the first thing I said was, what do you want to achieve in 2020? And we heard different things: California Distinguished School, Model Avid School. We want to be a demonstration school. And our students, we should be able to match up with any other school with similar demographics or even different demographics academically. Historically, Samuel High School has been a fantastic athletic school. We're extraordinary in extracurricular activities, but this is an area where, as an administrative team, we bring before you that we want to target by 2020 to be one of the best academic schools on the Central Coast. So taking a look at, let's see if I can see what we got here. Thanks to Wander, sorry. So looking at our phases, so right now we're in the January to June phase. We're moving in our planning, research and review June, creating a draft plan, sharing the draft with you in August. We're going to be working through the summer on this as well. And then revising and sharing the second draft with the board in late August. Our goal is to have a tentative plan to the board, the first meeting in September for finalization, approval, and preparing for full implementation for 17-18. Again, taking a look at where we are, we're in the development phase. What are we looking at? We're looking to incorporate our WASC goals, our SIPSA goals, and our LCAP goals into one comprehensive academic plan that we feel we can bring before the board, share with the community, share with the teaching staff, and get input from all stakeholders across the school community so that we can have implementation in 17-18. Again, one of the things that we took a look at, I went too far here, I apologize. So guys, finicky. Let's see how we go back, John.
Use the arrows.
Is there?
No, actually.
Yeah, it's not working. Oh, perfect, there we go. It was looking at, thank you, Jeremy, it was the vision and core values. So I don't believe these have been revised, and we have a few trustees in the audience that were with us for quite a long time, but I don't think these have been revised since maybe 2006-07, if my memory serves me right as far as institutional memory. So part of the plan would be take a look and see if these are still applicable. And if they are, then do we need to go ahead and re-adopt them? Do we need to take a look at those and try to go through a process where we refine those to meet our needs today? 2017 is much different than 2007. We may have some of the same similar issues, but our student body has changed, our demographics have changed, our teaching staff has changed. I think it would behoove us as a district to take a look at that. We defined our academic priorities, which was our first step. And we have 7 priorities that I've shared with the school community and the greater community. A to G graduation and college entrance requirements, math and algebra support. And I think if we really took a look at this, we could probably flip math up to number 1 if we were to do some type of prioritization. Continuing special education inclusion, our English language learners on campus, ELA and reading intervention, our CTE pathways and AVID. How does it all fit together? So in looking at our plan, the goal is to bring all houses in the district together in one template. So for example, in 17-18, we would take a look at 3 key areas, one being curriculum, the second instruction, and the third support. When we talk about curriculum, it's the type of curriculum delivered in a particular area. The third would be the type of instruction and or pedagogy in the classroom and instructional strategies. And the last, which is probably the most important, would be support for staff and support for students. And then along the continuum, you would have all of the houses in the district where they would be making a commitment, for example, in the area of mathematics. You would see how is Ed Services supporting mathematics in 17-18, curriculum instruction, new teacher support, all the way to the district's resources and what is this going to cost us. So the reason we want to do this is so that everybody has a stake. There is no one department on campus that's in charge of this plan. We're all in charge of the plan for our students. And then again, is identifying those goals. So at the end of 2020, we can safely say to the board at that particular time that we've achieved our goals along the way. And if we haven't, how much progress have we made? And where do we need to refine those as far as possible resources?
Is this anything like, I think Ellen will probably remember, and Steve, but we used to have these red books stuck away in the curriculum office, which is your office now. And Mike had all these red books, and every time a new teacher came by, that would be our way of standardizing our instruction, because curriculum, should be passed on, right? And I recall there were even hassles over it, like one new teacher comes in, wants to add new stuff, and then, do you fund that? Do you bring them in on a Saturday? I remember having Saturday workshops, these places where we created all this curriculum. Is that what you're hoping to do, or is it, with our new Chromebooks and all that, we wouldn't have to do red books, but something similar to that where everything that's been tried and tested would be in these banks, and every teacher of that class, that curriculum would be able to access it. Is that what you're planning?
Yeah, so good question, Ron. So take a look at the red books. Let's use that as an example.
Yeah.
So red books, if we have that type of implementation, let's say we had our pacing guides now and or some type of tool that we're using for curriculum. So we would take a look at in the area of mathematics. And in curriculum instruction, what are we going to do differently and or improve upon in 17-18?
And somebody in your area will be looking at all this stuff and making sure that these new teachers know what they're doing.
Yes.
And that the old teachers are giving, the veteran teachers are giving the newer teachers all the
So actually, this is a perfect example. So let's say you took the implementation of curriculum, and this was mathematics in this area in the top left-hand corner. And we were trying out a new curriculum and or supporting new teachers with whatever it might be curricular-wise. Then whose responsibility would be to provide support to our new teachers? This would be Captain Peaky. If we had EL students in mathematics, how are we supporting them through Joanne Kaplansky? How is Paula Cobb in special education supporting our special education students and our special education teachers? And what we found when we're looking at multi-plans is that they're multi-plans. You know, we have one that has a loss goal of this, we have one that has a SIPS goal of this, one that has an LCAP goal of this, but we don't have one document, one tool that we could safely say to the entire school community, this is what we're doing. And that is the goal, is to be transparent and open and honest, so that when our staff gives us feedback along the way to say, you know what, Cindi, you know, we think that we need to tweak this and this is why. And then we would take a look and say, okay, well, how does that affect everything else? What is that going to cost us?
Yeah, because that's a big deal right there. Our teachers, and anybody who's coaching, they're going to work outside of the school day.
It's possible, or during PLC time, or department meetings, division time, professional development days, yes. Good questions. So one of the things we're looking at is obviously college and career life ready. And you saw the 4 bullets here, which match all of our goals that we've rolled out through Mr. Ramirez. Our LCAP goals is really trying to drive the plan in a college and career life ready format. The other, which is something that would fall in the line of character in the Baylor Code with Mr. Dirks, is having a safe and emotionally healthy and engaged students on campus, is to continue to move that effort. And so we would build that into the plan and how we're addressing that with Mr. Dirks and his team. And then the last one, which to me is extremely important for the district, is operational excellence. Is to have the integrity of the organization and how we operate through customer service, our procedures without inefficiency. I think Director Fusetta is tired of hearing me talk about inefficiency in systems, but I do appreciate all you bearing with me. And then our use of data and its effective use of data. And we have so much data in the district, but are we effectively using that data? Next is our commitment. And so as we go through these next few months, in your packet, Derek Barnes is interviewed, applied, and been selected as the 3-year strategic plan coordinator. He will be our conduit or ambassador to the teaching staff, the external school community. Derek's got a master's in curriculum instruction. He's got one of the highest probably integrity as far as understanding curriculum instruction with the social science department. And so rather than it being an administrative plan, it'll be a plan by the teachers. And Mr. Barton is leading that through our efforts to gather stakeholder information. And the question we're going to ask everybody is, how do you see yourself in the plan? Now, how do we see our academic support staff? How do we see our counselors? And what can you do to support this vision for all students? Our next steps, really looking at, is to explain to the school community what the vision of the plan is and why. So after tonight, the board respectfully appoints Mr. Barnes. The announcement will go out. Item number 1 will be his first task to work with the school community on what this is. So you're getting a glimpse tonight. Beginning to talk with stakeholders to gain feedback and insight. I think in my 8 weeks as intern, I've met with over 40 teachers. So I've gathered a lot of input along the way to understand why we need this type of tool. Why do we need a strategic plan? Again, to look at the WASP recommendations, one of the things that Mr. Ramirez knows this well, that is stuck in every WASP plan, I think in the last 3 years with the trustees in the room, is to address common grading practices, and Mr. Barnes is eager and willing to take on that task so that we have some equity for all of our students across departments. Starting with the 9th grade. So we know we can't accomplish this in 1 year. We know that. But we need to have a starting point or a liftoff, and our 9th graders will begin the process. And then planning a meeting before the end of the year with all 9th grade parents, students, counselors, DCs, administrators to discuss and implement a new academic focus, basically a culture of the high school. We know we can't hit all 3,000 students, give or take, but we must start somewhere. And then the last piece that I'll share with you is, as this is going and moving forward, simultaneously, I will be putting together an academic task force that will be a sounding board for myself and Mr. Ramirez. That will be community members, parents, students, teachers, and classified staff members to get input over the next period of time, however long that is, to understand whether or not they feel that this plan is actually working or not. And that will be a good sounding board that we'll be able to do. So,
so Mr. Barnes has been involved in the development of where you are up to this point?
Mr. Barnes developed all 5 next steps.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. And then in your 40 some odd meetings with teachers, what was the buy-in like, the acceptance of the concept?
Yeah, I think chapter coordinator was one of the things that they all, first of all, having an academic direction, having a multi-year plan. We're very good at starting, and we're very good at 1-year plans, but having a multi-year plan that really builds over a period of time. And the fact that we've identified academic priorities. So one of the things that we're trying to do is work in concert. So Mr. Ramirez has defined rigor, relevance, and inclusion as the 3 pillars or the thrusts of what we're trying to achieve. But teachers over a period of time kept asking us, what are the priorities academically of the district? And so now we've been able to define those. And I think that gives a sense of comfort that they know what our priorities are and what our direction is.
Thank you.
I had one too. Common grading practices. How well is that going to go over so far?
Well,
I mean, do they want it or not? Because I've always heard like, I'm going to grade it how I want to grade it, and that's how it's going to be.
It's probably the most protective piece of talking to teachers. Probably one of the most protected pieces of what they do in terms of sitting at the table and talking about who does what and how they do it.
That's super scary because, again, if you get a teacher whose grades or their class is not doing well, they're going to want to flood those scores so they don't get on the watch, you know what I'm saying? And there are people, I hate to say that do that. And that's the worry is that, how do we...
Well, and I think on the flip side. So what we hear on the flip side is, what is an A in Mr. DeLay's class versus Mr. Tennenbaum's class versus Mr. Ramirez's class? And so in Mr. DeLay's class, it might be the most rigorous A, but in my class, for example, an A is maybe easier to attain. And I bet you if we asked any student in here, they could poll and tell you that an A in one class may not mean the same as an A in another class. That's not to say that teachers aren't doing a bad job. It's to say that there's a different perception.
Exactly.
And we're not trying to, as a district, dictate how teachers grade. That's first and foremost not what we're trying to do, is we're trying to have equity for all students. That if an A means this in social science, in the U.S. history course, that an A means the same thing in another course in the same discipline for an 11th grader.
Exactly.
That way we don't have teacher shopping, and we don't have those things happen where, I really want teacher A because I know I can attain this versus teacher B. And we as a district can safely say that when they walk through that door, those academic expectations have been met when that student earns a B or an A or a C in those particular classes. It will be a struggle, and it will take lots of conversation. But one thing I know about this district is it has resiliency.
Are we going to be looking for quantitative growth, maybe,
Yeah.
not shoot for the moon, but something. So, I mean, as a teacher, if I want to go up 2%, I'm gonna push for that 2%. If you give me 12%, I'm gonna be like, oh God, that's so hard. But if you can give me something to shoot for, and I know I attained it, then that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll have metrics for growth in all areas. So for example, in mathematics, we'll be looking at, growth for our special education subgroup versus our EL students, versus, our middle-of-the-road average students. So you're going to see, and one of the things that we really need to incorporate in the plan is our middle-of-the-road average students are probably our most precious commodity in the district. If you look at the bell curve, that's that 68% that is right there that the district needs to move.
Yes.
And so when we look at that, how do we support those students to achieve more success? And that's where we'll have our metrics and our growth. But with common grading practices, it would be something where we look at some adherence and say your 9th grade core classes. Is that a 55-45 split? Is it a 60-40 split? And what can our teachers agree on? Because they have to live with it. And we want their input along the way.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions.
Anything else? Thank you, Shawn.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Shawn, I just want to say thank you for, putting this together. I think it's terrific that you're putting this plan out there. And I, for one, also really like the idea that you're having a member of the teaching staff be the kind of like the lead person and following these next steps. I think that's a really good idea. I think it's going to really increase the buy-in of the teaching staff in general. And I think that getting that teacher's input on all aspects of the plan is critical in the long-term success of the plan. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is
Giselle Ford?
Yeah.
Ellen Merle.
You won't have me go.
Too late.
Too late.
I'm going to be doing another WASC accreditation here in April now. I've done, 20, 25 of these. I think it's really telling that WASC in the last 3 accreditations have pointed out grading practices as an area of improvement. And those WASC recommendations come from a lot of different areas within the school. And so they may be, as I know Mr. Ramirez and I have talked about, they may be coming and looking at testing, AP testing, and how that correlates with teacher grades. They may be looking at other kinds of factors. It may be coming from teachers themselves. It may be coming from data. It may be coming from parents. It may be coming from a lot of sources. But when it keeps coming up, you have to, you need to address it. And unfortunately, what I remember when I was on the board, that in the last review, it had not been addressed at all. It had been totally not addressed, and that was an area of concern that I had seen. The other thing is that I think the social, and I'm really glad that Mr. Barnes is going to be spearheading this, because I can remember when they were doing the collaboration in social studies, and the part of this is that all of the it's not world studies, but U.S. history teachers would sit down and they would discuss their grades, they would discuss their curriculum, they would come up with some commonality of thought about how that should be. So if you don't put that out there, those conversations may not happen. I know Mr. Barnes was really, really diligent when he was the department chair, the division chair in this order. So it's a really hard conversation, but as I said, for probably 12 or more years, a grade is the currency that you're giving our students. It's the money you're giving them. And it's really, really important that as professionals, everyone has that conversation.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to now hear the student behavioral trend analysis.
All right, good evening, Board of Trustees. I'd first like just to apologize. I absentmindedly submitted a draft instead of the final product that you'll see tonight. That's totally on me, that's my fault, and I apologize for that. That's my mistake. Tonight, myself and my team, consisting of Mr. Nick Ravago, Ms. Linda Yetter, and Mr. Robert Rivas, will present our findings and our data tonight. So, as you see in the presentation that you have, and also the one that we're going to see as well today, I changed it to a 2-year trend, and why we did that, the 2-year trend is because I wanted to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges. In the past, we're now using a more efficient team, in my opinion. Student services now, the 3 managers and myself, and so that's a little bit more of an efficient model, which we'll talk about as we go on some of our findings. And also, in the last 2 years, we've started to utilize our in-house suspension much more than we had in the past. So some of our suspensions, while they may seem higher, they weren't necessarily accounted for in the past, and now we're using in-house model. We're including that in our suspension totals. So I'm not going to go through all 30 slides unless you'd like me to. I'm more than willing to. However, I am going to skip forward to slide 17, review our SPED slides, our special needs students slides, because that was inserted, that was an additional one that we inserted on Monday morning, I believe. And so we'll jump forward to that. All right, this shows our total amount of special education suspensions by gender and also our total. We had 41 in 2014-15, and then 51 last year, 2015-16. Males accounted for 33 in 2014, females accounted for 8, and then you see the progression of 48 and 3. Here's our special education by grade level. We start with our 9th graders, and it follows a trend across discipline. More suspensions freshman year, and our hypothesis is as they mature a little bit, that tends to die down. So it kind of holds with our hypothesis as well. By special program, we threw this in just to show you kind of the different programs and some of their needs. Our research students accounted for 28, and in 2014-15, we see decrease to 21. SDC, 5 in 2014-15. 2015-16, we see an increase to 14. Emotionally stable students, 8 in 2014-15. And in 2015-16, we have 14. Life skills, 0 in 2014-15. 2015-16, we see 2.
So Jeremy, I actually have a quick question.
Yeah,
So I look at, just for me, is 51 total in 15-16. 21 of those suspensions were resources.
Correct.
How many of those were the same student?
I don't have that on this month, but I do have multiple suspensions at the end of our slides that we're
Typically, there is a correlation between students in special education and multiple suspensions.
So we could take into account and say that 21 doesn't represent 21 different.
Correct, very, very correct. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to talk about multiple year suspensions on one of our other slides, and that is a key resource. We just added our special education slides this year because we want to look at this demographic a little bit each for us and for the school as well. But I can definitely break that down. Special education suspension by percentage to your comparison. We see our SPED enrollment at 316 in 2014-15. Percentage of total enrollment was 11, as we've seen. SPED suspensions was 41. Percentage of total suspensions was 24. In 2015-16, we see our SPED enrollment jumped to 341, with a percentage of total enrollment being 12%. So we see our special ed enrollment increasing, as well as our special education suspension increasing. I'm not going to review this unless you'd like me to, but this is our total number of expulsions. You saw that in your board packet. This is our multiple suspensions. I don't need to review that. It wasn't in their packet, but if you'd like me to speak on that, we can totally do that. And we'll speak to that in our findings as well.
Quick question. If one student has had 8 suspensions, okay, so why is he still there? I mean, I don't know, like.
I don't want to speak on one specific student, but
no,
however.
but I'm just saying in general, like, if
no.
that's responsible, then it's not something, okay, so you can't give me
I can speak in generality, so. A lot of
would that
times you'll
student
see
remain here?
Well, I can,
Yeah.
so basically what happens is, as you know, our special education program encompasses all of
So
our.
this is
our-
sped students then?
No,
This is all students, however.
Okay.
Yeah, well, this includes all numbers, but typically if you see a student, one student or two students that make, for example, two students that made up 8 suspensions, those are typically what you're asking, like, why would those students be here? So
Exactly.
typically what we have is those students would be under our ED program.
Okay.
And so there is no other place other than it gets to an extreme case where there's a consideration for some sort of non-public placement. And so that's why you see an ED student or maybe a low social skill SDC student who will have, more than your gen ed student.
Well, I thought this was gen ed info. That's what I was trying to understand.
This is everyone combined in this final slide.
Okay.
Okay. Next, I'm going to turn it over to our support managers, and they're going to discuss some of our findings with you, and then I will wrap it up and talk about some of our next steps.
Good evening, board members, administrative staff. My name is Robert Rivas. I'm a support manager here on campus, one of 3 of our support managers. And so I'm going to go through some of the key findings, which is in the PowerPoint that you have before you. I'm going to go through the first few. I ask that you reserve your questions at the end of the findings, but certainly if you have a pressing question, feel free to ask. And certainly, based on this this data, in 2015-16, there was a total of the 49 suspensions there was an increase of the 49 more suspensions from the previous year, which based on our total enrollment amounts to a 2% increase over the previous year. And that, in our male suspensions, was an increase. We had a total increase of the 33 suspensions from 130 to 163 between those 2 years. While the male, the population here on campus is 51% of our total enrollment. Males account for 74% of total suspensions. The male Hispanic suspensions, they decreased by 1% between 2014-15 and 15-16. Female Caucasian suspensions increased from a total of 3 to 12, which represented less than 0.5% of an increase between those 2 years. In 9th through the 10th grade suspensions, they increased significantly from 14-15 to 15-16, and this was an across-the-board increase in all categories in 9th and 10th graders, females and males, between those 2 years. So at this time, Mr. Watt.
Good evening. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
You guys all got my Valentine's cards? Nick Rabagos, student support manager, 1/3 of that team. Verbal related suspensions increased by 9% for male Caucasians, but alternatively, female Hispanic suspensions for the same thing, your verbal related suspensions decreased by 12% between those 2 school years. Safety-related suspensions. Safety-related suspensions increased among all demographic groups in 2015-16, with the most significant increase among male Caucasians, which was up 8%. But vandalism and theft suspensions actually decreased pretty significantly. Now, our total drug suspensions, including alcohol-related suspensions, increased by a total of 14 incidences from 2014 to 2016. And our drug and alcohol-related suspensions increased for male Hispanics by 3% from 2014-15 to 2015-16. Ms. Shatter will finish off with some of the key findings.
Good evening. It's appropriate that we're here on Valentine's Day because Benito High is the love of our life.
I'm still waiting for
So while students with special needs account for 12% of enrollment, our special education students account for 24% of suspensions. And 33% of the suspensions in 2015, 2016, were by students with multiple suspensions. But I do want to make a little addition to that finding that of the 33%, those are total suspensions. But as far as multiple students, only 13% of students who are suspended have a second incident. So 87% of our students who are being suspended never get suspended again. And then total expulsions in both 2014 and 15 and 2015 and 16 were the same at 8 each year. And overall, only 5% of our student body account for all suspensions. So 95% of our kids are coming to school every day and doing a great job.
Next are some of our next steps, some of the things we're looking towards and working on, and we're always open for comments and ideas on this as well. Continue with consistent discipline and team collaboration. It really works well with us being right next to each other and working together as a team. We can have equity that way as well. I can bounce it off Nick, or Nick can bounce it off Linda, Linda can bounce it off Robert. Hey, what are we doing with this student? Is this consistent with our practice so it's not, so students aren't having favorites, to be honest with you. Research alternative discipline models to better serve our special educational students. Myself and Ms. Yetter are working on just reaching out and finding what other folks are doing, because those multiple suspensions are rough, and it's not easy for our special education students either. So we're working on that and alternative discipline models. Continue to collaborate with outside professional services to provide counseling and mentoring to our at-risk populations to reduce the percentage of repeat suspensions. Some of the groups we work with, GIAS, Youth Alliance, Community Solutions, In Touch with Teens, Behavioral Health is a large one that we LULAC, a host of different Adelante program, a host of different groups, and we're looking to always to expand that and use any resource that we make that's available to us. Work with facilities to secure a permanent appropriate space for behavioral health services to provide individual counseling services and groups, counseling in groups. Sometimes our folks we're struggling for space for them to house them on campus, and that's part of the growth that we're receiving, but we would like to house them somewhere. And then that's really it as far as our next steps. We're always looking to improve. We're always looking to help students. One thing I do want to say is that these 5% of students, they're not bad kids. We work with them day in and day out. Linda got a thank you card and a Valentine's card today from someone that's suspended, and her and him and her parents. I shockingly get hugs after expulsion sometimes. Nick's, doing home calls, or you calling mom and saying, hey, this is what's happening with your student, just so you know. So they get in trouble once in a while, but they're finding their way through life, and I think we're a big group to help them get through those problems. I'm open to any questions. Our team, we're here for you.
I always be sorry. It seemed like the drugs are increasing, the suspension for drugs. I know we contract with Wonderwolves or something to that effect.
Wonderwolves, we have a contract.
How often are they coming on campus and checking or smelling or whatever?
Right now they're coming about twice a month, and right now they're only doing perimeter searches and locker room searches. We have the availability to do them in the classroom. Still kind of feeling that out and seeing how.
So that'll be part of my interim superintendent's report.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about removal of some direction.
But we do have those capabilities.
Good time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good time.
Most of this was on suspensions and expulsions and things that are what I consider the heavy-duty stuff. How about detention hours, ineligibility, the communication to kids about their detention hours? Sometimes you're not dealing, when you're dealing with 1,800, almost 2,900 students, the problem with some students, they don't even know they have hours. And how are you communicating those hours to these people on a daily and a weekly basis?
What we can do, Trustee Robledo, is we can provide a similar report in that type to be able to bring back, what our numbers look like, what trends look like, and then be able to provide you with what the team does in terms of communication, and then even any identified areas that need improvement or growth.
So ineligibility detentions are not part of discipline?
No, they are part of the discipline process, but they're not part of this report. But that's something that we can definitely bring back to the board as far as a report. The board pleasure, we can.
Well, you know, because some of the things that are important is you communicate about, you know, consistency and discipline. And I'm wondering if in that report you could also talk about consistency across the board with teachers. You know, not that they have to be consistent, but, you know, I recall that some are different than others.
I think we can provide the board with some insight on some things that we're finding with the system. Yeah.
That would probably be of interest to the kids that are your A students, your B students, your athletes, your officers.
Definitely. We can work on that, no problem. Sure, Tiffany?
Any sense of whether or not the cameras that we now have in place, and spent quite a bit of money on, are helping with respect to discipline or have any effect on it whatsoever?
My honest opinion is that they're already outdated, and we don't get, they're kind of blurry, grainy, we don't see very good images. However, I do believe they're a deterrent. I know our vandalism went down and our theft. I think that's really due to our gates and our protection on the weekend, because most of those were occurring overnight or on the weekends. But to be honest with you, the current cameras we have, we're not getting very good pictures from them.
So, Jeremy, one of the things that I would challenge the team is to come up with an actual timeline and plan for bullet number 2. If 1 out of every 4 of our suspensions is a special education team, I would work with,
we'll work with Ms. Cobb,
the whole team.
Of course, yeah.
And, we need something implemented for 17, 18, because those numbers, for my history, those are the most staggering numbers I've seen in that area.
So this is our first year, at least historically, that I've seen the report that we've reported on those numbers, but I do agree that they're staggering.
I just want to, first of all, I just want to commend Assistant Principal Dirks and his team. I will tell you, and I have to admit, having been a manager in EP and overseeing discipline, I was very reluctant to the change in the model that was changed. But I was very reluctant. But I can tell you, in the 14 years I've been here, this is the best unit that we've had as far as being able to provide a very systematic, consistent form of follow-up and just consistency across the board. Very proactive group, so I really want to commend them for doing that. As you guys know, the safety world is as complex as it's ever been. They probably spend a lot of time dealing with cyberspace and social media. I guess is the more relevant term, social media. So doing a great job, but absolutely one of our big focuses is, and what they're actively looking and researching right now, is the alternative and more effective model for working with students who commit some of these disciplinary actions. And for our SPED students, for our students, our ED students, for our students in low social skills, because what we do know is the repetitive suspension is not effective. Even if you're looking at it from a modifying behavior and improving behavior, it gives maybe some breathing room for one day, but we need to really bring those students back onto campus right away, because as soon as some of these students get home, things start to unravel, and all the work, for example, that Mr. Baumgarten may be doing because of the circumstances some of these students have. So we know that that's a very specific area that we need to address and focus. And we've already started taking some action with some of our community agencies to see how we can. We have a lot of services around, but we don't have a system, a real comprehensive system in place yet for all of our students. And so that's the next step.
So maybe like a strategic plan.
Yep.
Any more board questions? Ray?
Any other questions?
So just a little bit of history. I'd like to thank, back when Principal Ramirez was an assistant principal, we had a lot of go back and forth about what data we wanted each year. And so the data has been consistent. And that allows you to do the year-to-year trends. And the title of it was Student Behavior and Trend Analysis. And I, thank you, Mr. Dirks, for it. But I would argue that what you've got in your board packet, a multiple-year trend, 2 years doesn't make a trend. 2 years lends itself to saying theft suspensions decreased significantly. Well, they went from 13 to 2, but what were they before? You know, they were 5, 7, and 6. So you had an anomaly. We all know that anomalies can, the outliers for a year, and then we can take advantage of them. And it makes a suspicious person like me in the past say that you're toying with the data to make it look good for you. Just like you can say it looks like drug and alcohol have gone up, but maybe they went down for 2 years. Because if you go back to 11, 12, there were 62 incidences, then 65, then 37 and 39 the 2 previous years, and then 53. So maybe we're back to normal. Is normal acceptable? No. What did we do different when it was in the 30s? And then, of course, I have to throw in there for the board, in case you don't realize it, I try to be aware of our sociological assumptions that are driving our results. And you look at the long-term trend data, and our Latino male are 50%, or 32, 33, 34% of our population, and they're consistently 50% of our suspensions. So to me, that would be a key factor until we start balancing that out a little bit, see the trends over long-term change. I don't expect you to even the scales as we were talking about fudging grades, but there's the outlier. You know, I mean, in a perfect world, 34% of the population would be 34% of the suspensions. We realize that's not going to be true. Why are there differences between male and female suspensions? But in a 2-year trend, I think it's content free.
Anything else on that? Okay, we're going to move on to L6, City Safety Plan for 2017-18.
All right, all of you should have received quite a large binder, and I'm not going to go through the whole binder. I'm just going to explain the purpose of it and kind of what we're hoping for, and we'll bring it back on the 28th for a final reading. So the purpose, Education Code 32-280 requires that all schools must develop a comprehensive school-wide safety plan relevant to its needs and resources. Its purpose is to assess the current status of school crime, safety-related incidents committed on school campuses, and school-related functions. That's why we do include our discipline report in that, and also our SARC report can be included as well if needed. Identify appropriate strategies and programs that will provide or maintain a high level of school safety and address the school's procedure for complying with existing laws, and that information is in there. Some of the required elements of the plan, or the requirement elements of the plan. Assessment of safety-related incidents at school and safety and school-related functions. And then to identify appropriate strategies and programs. Some examples of like the child reporting procedures, disaster procedures, dress code, and the various sorts. So that everyone knows, this is a living document. The safety plan is intended to be a living document. After, ideally, you approve it on the 28th, we're still adding to it, we're subtracting from it, we're updating board policy, or something as small as changing a phone number in there, something. So it's always a living document, it's always something we're working on. Any questions or any specific feedback on, or questions on that binder?
I remember having trouble with those code red, code blue drills. One specific incident was when we had supposedly the threat of a shooter on campus. Then it turned into a bomb scare, but we were still kept on the shooter on campus mode. And the difference between that is you're quiet while you blow up, as opposed to be quiet because you'll get shot. And the big difference is that it's kind of nice to be able to know that, you can talk a little bit because it's a bomb scare. And then the other thing that somebody told me is probably the best place to be when there's a bomb on your campus is away from the buildings. So those kinds of things should be, looked at. So it never happens again, because I remember I was with those kids for 2 hours, and we even had to develop a way for them to relieve themselves. And it got to be where, God, if it's a bomb scare, they're not going to blow up anything to go to the bathroom. Or we could figure out, if the bomb's not in that bathroom, let them go to the bathroom. But these kinds of things should never happen. Correct. Staff should be included in what's really going on. Is it a shooter on campus or is it a bomb scare? If it's an earthquake, we know what that is. We can feel the ground shake. We don't know what's going on out there, and the more you keep us in the dark, I remember that time, I didn't feel good being kept in the dark, because I kept everybody quiet as if that shooter was right outside my wall. It turned out to be a bomb scare, and that really aggravated me as a teacher, of course.
We do have an internal communication system. It's a certain code with emails. However, I've heard about that instance, and that was once also the police come on campus, they take control of the situation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next, we're on the PE requirement.
Okay, hello again, and basically what I'm doing is giving a little bit of a review. The last meeting, we gave an overview in terms of our A through G requirements. Principal Grissom and the team provided you with some areas of concern. And so following me is going to be Director Krokower in terms of a proposed change to how we're approaching it. And so really what we wanted to do is to remind the board and really review the challenge with PE right now. Now again, remember, PE is not the only, as we talked about last time, PE is not what's causing, but it's a piece to it in order to give our students the flexibility to take the courses that they would need to meet the demands of a grad requirement for graduation. So the challenge is that the new two-year PE requirement eliminates room for an elective again in the sophomore year with the traditional 6-class schedule. And so in order for us to focus on our academic priority in our direction and to provide the students with access, we definitely recommend that we revert to the prior board policy as adopted back in July of 2015. And so what that looks like is that we would still have a two-year PE requirement. Students would still be required to pass the physical fitness test. That was definitely a big concern for our PE department in terms of focusing on that. But really, the change here is that a student would be able to forego their sophomore year in order to make schedule those courses, those needed courses for A through G, and have the opportunity to, let's say, postpone it to their junior or their senior year. The requirement would still stand that they would have to pass a physical fitness test in order to be weighed out. And so just as a clarification, we are not at all proposing or requesting that we bring back any of the waivers in terms of the sports waivers, but that's really the basic request that we're putting forward. So
you're asking to revert to an old policy but change the old policy at the same time? And eliminate the waivers?
The policy that we're bringing forward would reflect that. Yeah. And so this is just sort of a precursor as far as just review of information before Director Krokower comes forward with you with the actual formal policy. So just in case there were any other questions or concerns. That's all I have.
Any questions or motion to approve the recommendation?
I move to approve the recommendation of just striking grades 9 and 10, leaving the athletic waiver not available to be done.
Second.
Yes.
Oh, no, yes.
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 Thank you, trustees.
Okay, next one is a public hearing, first reading, proposed board policy 146.1.
Good evening again, Board of Trustees. So based on the recommendation that you just provided and adopted and to bring forward to you for public hearing and first reading, the board policy on graduation requirements. If you take a look, this simply reverts to the graduation participation requirements prior to, I believe it was August. It simply removes the wording for physical education. It just removes the completed in grades 9 and 10, giving students the freedom, if they do pass the physical fitness test, to perhaps postpone that second year of PE. Those strike-throughs are seen on page 105 with our graduation requirements, page 106 with the career and college pathway graduation requirements, and page 107 for long-term independent study.
Any questions from the board? Okay, open the public hearing. Anybody like to speak on this issue? Close the public hearing. Okay, board, any questions or motion? Oh, this is not being known about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
We did 9 already. Go to 10, public hearing, first reading, board debt policy.
So this is on page 135, and as Jeff said, we took the board policy from CSBA, but tailored it for our needs here at San Benito. And one of the main policies of this, or tenets, is I'm losing my thoughts, I'm sorry, disclosure. We have to let the state know there's a specific organization that we have to let know that we are issuing debt before we can issue debt. And there are certain, the budget has to be balanced. We can't have had a negative or qualified interim report. The rules and the policy just help us to prove that we are good stewards of the district's funds. Any questions? And this is the public hearing.
And this is for that 30-year thing we're doing.
Any debt. It's the GO bond, but if we had any other kind of debt, it would fall under these rules.
So a new high school, because I figured 30 years from now, you might need it. Okay, this is covered pretty well here. Because I read that part, the district may issue debt for any of the following purposes, including acquiring district facilities, and we would need another facility if this place got to be 5,000. Right. Or whatever. 4,000, we need 4,000. We'd need a second high school. And at that point, we'd have to do another bond issue, and I think we could possibly do it, at that time when we have to do it.
There are other kinds of loans that are available to school districts too, and this would cover that. So.
Any further questions before we open the public?
I have one question. What did you more specifically explain what grant anticipation notes are?
On page
137.
Tran are ban or Tran?
GAN. GAN.
Those are those would be in the case of receiving a grant. I'll say like Title I, just for an example. We know it's coming, but we don't know when, and so we take out a cash flow loan, so to speak.
Okay.
To borrow the money in anticipation of receiving that money.
Okay. Thank you.
And our county treasury is like our bank in terms of all the monies that goes in there.
Yes.
We'll open the public hearing. Any speakers? No speakers? We'll close the public hearing.
We have one.
Oh, we do
This
that?
is on 14.
Oh, all right. We're going to move now to the proposed restructure for the custodial services.
Okay.
Them all here now.
Hi there. Good to see you up this late.
So this is the current staffing that we have right now. But as noted in our cover sheet, our square feet is increasing dramatically and will continue to. As you know, we added 10,000 square feet with the PE addition. The CTE building is approximately 38,000, which will go online in August of 2017, and the VAPA building is approximately 17,000, and that's slated to open in January of 2018. So we are proposing, well, this is the current situation, backwards. The current is, we have Darren, the manager, and we have the different trades workers. We have a senior night custodian, and then we have 8 regular custodians. So what we propose is a custodial supervisor. The senior night custodian position wouldn't be filled, that the person in that position would be laid off, and that person would roll into custodians, and so we would go up to 9, but we would have a custodial supervisor in this fiscal year. And in 17-18, we would start the year, July 1, we would hire another custodian for the CTE building, or to accommodate that. And then in January, we would hire another one to accommodate the VAPA building.
I'd like to see what kind of a job description the custodial supervisor is. I know there's nothing listed in here, but I want to know, kind of have an idea. Obviously, I know what a custodian does and the senior night custodian, but I'd like to see if I can for future. Are we adopting or?
No, this is for information.
Yeah, so maybe whenever we come back, that I'd like to see a prospective job description.
Certainly. We usually bring them for. We will bring it. That's part of the process to bring them.
And then could I see what the senior night one is, even though, because I'm sure that's already here someplace, just so I can see where the transfer of responsibility is and what's the new one going to be responsible.
One of the main differences is that the senior night custodian is a bargaining unit member.
Okay.
And so there's no supervision duties or evaluation. But in the proposal, the supervisor would not be in the unit, so would be able to evaluate and supervise.
But where does he fall regarding, if he's not a bargaining unit member, where does he fall?
He's in the confidential supervisorial group.
Okay, so we're picking somebody up to another level?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd still like to see that though.
Of course.
Yeah, I would too, because, one of the things that I've always used at this district is that we're really heavy on the top, and sometimes we actually need more help pushing the room than we do telling somebody to sweep that area. And so if we could see if we're gaining anything from this, because with more square footage, do we need more helpers, more bodies? And maybe something can be also an alternative plan where somebody who is able to supervise them would some days come in at 7 or 8 in the morning to deal with the daytime things, and then other times maybe 3 or 4 to deal with the nighttime things.
And we could have that, like, if I'm understanding you, that flexibility with a supervisor, or not necessarily with a bargaining unit member.
And we're not really laying off, we're just moving from a lead to a regular, so it's not any reduction in staff.
No, it's hard for me as a bargaining unit member to let one go. And that's just my own thought process.
But we're not letting one go.
You're losing a bargaining unit member.
No. We're just switching from a lead to a custodian.
But you are eliminating a bargaining unit person, and they're going up to a level. Okay,
Yeah,
so where am I not understanding?
Yeah, so in a sense, and let's go back one, Roseanne, and this is a good question, how to use it. We're proposing to eliminate a position, not a person. So there'd be no person in the district and or employee in the district would lose their job, so to speak.
Oh, I'm not worried about the job I'm using, I'm worried about the bargaining.
No, we have See, we have the senior night and the custodians, that's 8 bodies,
Okay.
8 men.
And I see that it goes to 9
Right, so that
with the
person,
supervisor.
right, so that person that's in the senior night custodian would simply move laterally to a custodian.
Okay, so do they lose pay?
Yes, so there is a difference.
So there's, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying, like, there is a reduction somehow. Does that make sense? That's just my own, that's why I just like to see it. I'll see a future.
Yeah.
I just want to see what you're exchanging for. I'm all right with that. I'll wait.
My concern is that when we lost the librarian to create the directorship, we added more funds, and we keep adding more people to our staff, FTEs, if you want to call them that. And so somehow or other, we're going to be paying for this custodial supervisor, where if we didn't have the custodial supervisor and we added another custodian, that would save some money there for the district. And I'm wondering if that's something that could be tried out for a while. Are these janitors or custodians not doing their job?
I think you might want to, yeah.
And
It's more of a-
if so, how can we
Evaluate.
effectively use the people we already have to get them in there and get them to do their job? It'd be like hiring a principal for the night school teachers.
Well, some of the issues, if I may speak on some of those concerns, in the past when I was the manager of facilities, is time and time again I would hear that I was not able to be on site and give an accurate evaluation because I'm working all day, and then I would be expected to be here at night for different situations and stuff, which is a very valid concern. I totally get that. But as we are growing as a district here with all these different functions, and we have all these night functions that are going on, the lead person would be, of course, in charge of organizing and efficiently taking care of all the functions at night. Also, with the cleaning of all these new facilities and implementing trainings and the safety aspect of it, and they would also take the lead in all the reports that go to the health department as far as MSDS sheets, the cleaning methods used, the training for all that good stuff. And as we get these different types of floors densified concrete, the weight room that has the rubber floor, plumb, all the wiping down and the cleanliness, the MRSA issue, they can speak on all that, and they would attend the daily meetings for the managers and supervisors that is run by the HR department as far as all the trainings on how to lead their group and efficiently have the trainings and address the concerns, as little as vacation, how to balance that out appropriately and have some equity in that department. Right now, they don't have that person. Darren's expected to work during the day, come down when there's an issue, and they're the only department, and they're growing, that wouldn't have that lead person on this campus as everybody else does, all the other departments do. They have that fallback person, to have that supervisor to lean on, question, and hold accountable of, hey, where's my training for all the new equipment? When are we going to see some new equipment, the new training methods and all this good stuff as the other ones do? And we've heard issues that they feel that they're treated like they're bottom of the barrel because they don't get this attention. Well, here we are, we're trying to get some equity at all the different departments and get a lead person that they can lean on, ask questions, ask all the training issues, and simply talk to if there's a problem at home. They don't have that right now.
But we just received a letter saying they don't want a supervisor. You know what I mean? They just want someone to help them clean.
Well, the other part
So
of
it
it
doesn't necessarily sound like, yes, we want to structure it that way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they feel. So again, that's why I wanted to see a job description. I wanted to see what this is future entailing, so I have an idea before I make a conscious decision.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes there are better ways to think it out.
And the other part is accountability.
What?
And the other part of that is accountability. And as all the other departments have an accountability to a supervisor or manager.
Exactly.
This one does not.
I hear you.
That's the one main thing that I've heard quite a bit from when I did evaluations and so forth, is that we need support. Myself being here from 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm trying to devote as much time as I can to the day because it does entail quite a bit from beginning to end. From the minute I set foot here, even before time starts, there's crises typically happening.
What time did you start today? 3:30?
I was 4 a.m. this morning with an alarm call, with K9 dogs and so forth. So it's quite an eventful day, but and it's not over. So you know. So, but as it, in a nutshell, basically what Roseanne and Rob had entailed already. It's a very eventful position, and we're an expanding community. And I see where there's a lot of growth happening that requires the attention of a nighttime supervisor to give the needs to the night crew. It's unfair to them to be able to go through the night without any support, and constant support, and accountability, just like Rob mentioned. It's the only group that we have in the district that does not have constant supervision. They are set in their ways at times, and they believe that I've been doing this for 18 years, this is the way it should be done. And
But would your custodial supervisor be here in the evenings?
yes.
So what would that hour be then? If they have to come and show up at the department meetings and then get the train, I mean, are they a 12-hour position? I mean, I don't
No,
understand.
they would work the same hours as the custodians, so they're working 2:30 is their start time, 11 o'clock would be their end time.
But there would be some flexibility with the staff.
So when we hold our evaluation trainings, our conversation trainings, our accountability, we do contract management, all of those factors, they'll still be able to attend that. I think one of the things, and I really appreciate the team being here, is we're really trying to be proactive here. I've heard for 10 years in human resources, the same issues have come forward for 10 straight years. And, we're trying to balance those. We've tried to have Darren come down here. When it was Rob, we tried to have Rob come down here. I've dealt with CSDA labor reps, 5 different labor reps on the same issues over and over again. And for us not to try something different, we had to come up with a plan that said, not only are we looking at 16, 17, but we're really looking at 18, 19, and 19.
Well, exactly, because of all the buildings.
Because when we have that CTE building that comes in at 38,000 square feet, and we have the VAPA building at 17,000 square feet, right behind that is going to be a brand new science lab that the board projects at. Then there's going to be a brand new classroom.
Yeah, the 12
And all of those are going to add square footage. And then, we're thinking, we have an aquatic complex. We're going to add locker rooms there. All of those factors are going to be cleaned at night. So if we can get structure in place and systems in place now to really adequately support our staff and students and our employees, we feel we'll be better off down the road. And so we just respectfully bring that forward as a proactive solution.
So this job description will show an 8-hour job, 5 days a week, and these people are going to be busy from start to finish.
And if it didn't, Trustee Benito, if it didn't work out, then we would sit down and try a different solution. But, we've tried to bend their hours to get them down here as far as flexibility, and it hasn't worked. Then we tried different things with our senior night custodian as far as directing traffic and really trying to get input, and that didn't work. So we have been proactive. It's just at this stage, we feel, and looking at our square footage and where we're going, that this may be the best option. But if it doesn't work, we'll come back to you with another solution.
And when will we know it doesn't work or it does work?
Well, I think the first thing is to get the implementation.
Okay, once it's implemented.
Then we take a look at, we've got 2 more custodians built into the budget. So we've got 10 and 11 coming on board. 10 would be July, 11 would be January. So I think bringing the report back to the board, a year from now, let's say a year after we get our 11th person, to determine, what the effectiveness is. Have we improved our efficiency? Have we improved our training? Have our processes?
Will the survey be done with these people that are affected, the stakeholders?
I think, they have some input.
I think it should include the teachers too, see how the rooms are being managed, how the facilities.
Well, that's what it should be doing. That should be automatic every year.
How ASB is supported.
Every year you should be asking teachers, how are your rooms being cleaned? And then that should be a red flag to go check out and see if they're busy watching TV or doing something else other than cleaning up.
Well, and also along those lines is events like this tonight. They have to come and set this up, which affects, how they clean their rooms, their schedules and stuff. And we have a play going on, which we do, and basketball games and all that good stuff. Then they have to have a collaborative effort to get over there and take care of it, especially if the night, gets late into it. And they have to pull everybody out of those rooms. So, and when you start adding square footages like everybody's talking about, we really believe that leadership can organize that whole group and keep the guys safe at night. And safety is first and foremost.
There could be more than two.
So,
there needs to be more than two, but.
That's a growing department, which a lot of growing needs out there. We feel that we just, be equitable to that group. They need some leadership.
Thank you for listening.
Well, I remember being here tonight, and all I wanted to do was have a key that I could open up. I had to call them to open up for me. Poor guys. Rob, I had to bring that back. Should have trusted you with a master key. You should have.
Anything else before the board, from the board before I open it up?
Nope.
Okay, we're open public hearing, public comments. Close the public hearing. Okay, this will come back at a future date.
Pretty quick, thank you.
Next one, resolution 2016-17-020. Measure U.
The county treasurer needs a resolution from the board in order to open a new fund. And we would use the fund to deposit Measure U monies into in order to keep them separate from G. And just to help with the accounting to make sure everything is proper. That's what this resolution is for. I can't talk.
I know, I'm sorry.
I just have one
Sure.
comment. I'm just wondering if in the introduction, recital someplace, that just in parentheses maybe you should put Measure U, just so that it's easier to track. I mean, I know that.
Oh, and the title of the fund?
Maybe even the title, yeah, just so it's easy to track. 'Cause I know everybody that's kind of like in the know, they know what you're talking about, but people forget. The public certainly isn't going to know, and I think that's always helpful to people. It's helpful to me.
And we adopted with that change?
What?
So can someone make a motion?
With the change.
I'll second that.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. And the next one is resolution 2016-17-021, increasing classified employee due to lack of work requirements.
So good evening once again, trustees. You've had an opportunity to take a look at the resolution. The resolution simply is a product of an analysis of our transportation department. It is a very fluid department, so it takes a 7-hour driver down to a 5.5-hour driver, and that is simply due to the number of students and the particular students that that particular driver was transporting. So our routes do change. And our needs change every year, and so we respectfully bring this before you to adopt so that we can have a 5.5-hour versus a 7-hour.
Didn't we mention that some of our kids are sitting on buses too long? Is that, if we reduce a bus driver, isn't that, how does that help that?
So that's a route system versus this particular driver is driving a route that is only 5.5 hours to a destination, and there's not enough to actually part and parcel that interior.
So
this
not
person
a way
is
to
going-
use
yeah.
this person in that area at all? Okay.
We looked at every, trust me, we looked at every possible angle to keep it, but at this particular, this is an external route that goes outside of our county, and it doesn't have 7 hours worth of work.
I would move adoption of resolution 2016-2017-021.
A second?
Yes.
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 Thank you, trustees.
Okay, the next one is adopt resolution 2016-17-022. That's the Safe Haven School District.
So the resolution being brought before you, trustees, has, to give you a little bit of background, been a very important topic in the state of California. This is a resolution that we see across the state, school districts adopting at this particular moment. There are probably 4 or 5 different versions of a similar resolution that is either one in adoption phase, 2 being adopted, or 3 being analyzed across the state. And basically, the Safe Haven School District resolution that you have before you is the one that a colleague of mine at Sacramento City Unified, Jose Bonda, the superintendent, his district, which is one of the most diverse in the state, adopted. After their creation and adoption of it, Tom Torlakson and CDE used this as their template. The reason we looked at this particular resolution, and we did incorporate some from another resolution that was provided to us, was we looking at the analysis of the federal funds that the district receives, and working with our attorney group, we feel that there are strength in numbers. Because we don't know what could happen potentially out of Washington, D.C. with federal funds, but we do know that we have an obligation, and we feel very strongly to protect all of our students. And so we felt very confident bringing this before you, which would take care of our students and protect their rights, but also align ourselves with some of the biggest districts in the state, should there be any potential ramifications coming out of Washington, D.C. So I bring this before you. We did have an opportunity to share this with our migrant families. I did share this with Mickey Luna and the LULAC group ahead of time. Our goal would be to respectfully ask that the trustees adopt this evening and or make any changes, and then we can distribute that to our entire school community.
Questions from the board? Okay, we have 3 comments. Debbie?
Good evening. Good evening. It's a difficult topic, I think, for some. Has to do a lot with safety in the school. Schools are very much a sanctuary for students. It's one of the few places that our community can come and you don't have to worry about your political affiliation, your religion. The focus, the mission, as I've seen tonight explained, is for the education purposes. In a strategic plan, I also saw that it was very, very honed in on education, and that it would be, let me see if I can find my notes, because I thought they were really good. Education of all students. The strategic plan had a goal of 2020 of being the best academic school in the Central Coast. The very end line, I think it was maybe in the safety plan, I'm not sure if it was a strategic plan. It's to promote individual dignity, integrity, and respect to diversity. I think you guys have a lot of policies already in place that protect a lot of the school, the students that are here, the staff that are here. And the only thing that I didn't see protected is students, staffs, and families' political affiliation. And I say that because I've never felt more fearful for my daughter coming to school because of the political rhetoric following the presidential election. Never have I ever felt that way. As a school board member, a very small district, very similar to what your guys' responsibility. Everybody in the district, the students of high school, it's a compulsory education. They have to come to school. They're required to. It's not like a university or a college campus or a private school where you can say, you know, you can come here if you want to. It's a requirement that they come here. And it's for the sake of the education. It's really hard for me to come up here and speak in regards to this because I know I'll be perceived as being intolerant. I'm not intolerant at all. I would like you to stay focused on your mission that I think you guys have well defined. It allows, through your board policies, and I've looked at many of them, you have a lot of them already in place. One of them, to start off with, has to do with the board's limits of the board member's authority. And I just want to say, if you can look at that one, it's 9041. There's another one that has to do with the board policy 5131.2 and 2A, B, and C. There's also, that has to do with bullying. There's also freedom of speech. And again, the only thing that's not covered in there is political affiliation. Students here on campus do vote. Those that are of age that are registered, they do vote. There's been times in classes my daughter comes home and she's very disturbed that a teacher has chosen to essentially try to affect their political beliefs onto students and to make it uncomfortable for students to be in their class. That's not a good feeling to have, and I don't think that's something that you guys want here either. If you were to adopt the resolution, I would ask if you can give it a cooling off period between the election. I think there's a lot of anxiety that's revolved around the rhetoric of the political process. We go through presidential elections every 4 years unless something happens or changes with that process. Working for the federal government, I feel it a lot. Every 4 years, a new administration, we don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of anxiety that comes with this. This year, for whatever reason, it's even more so. I even find it at work that there's political differences, and my staff don't even want to talk to other folks because they don't want to have that intimidation, that bullying, essentially. And so that's what I'm concerned about. So if you can consider a cooling off period would be, if you can consider that. Another thought that I had is in regards to, looking at the policies that you already have in place. I read through this quite a bit and trying to figure out the intention of it, to really understand where was it coming from, and it seems a lot to have to do with immigration as opposed to a safe haven. And I guess that's the other thing that wasn't real clear in my mind as to why was that being pulled out. If it's a sense of that because of someone's nationality or where their origin, that's already protected by a lot of your policies. The other thing that's been most recently in the news, and a lot of rhetoric revolved around it, has to do with a Muslim, being Muslim. Why not also add that in here if you're going to start, teasing out different aspects? It's not in here currently, but there was an executive order by the president of certain Middle Eastern countries that has been identified as predominantly Muslim. And so, if you were to say, well, we're trying to provide a safe haven for immigrants, why are we just saying immigrants? Why don't we be more broad? And so I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here of I want to make sure that you provide by education. That's what your mission is. That's what your strategic plan says also. The part that I'm not really clear on, has to do with families, including this as a safe haven for the families. You already have board policy that protects families. You have board policy that protects against releasing information. So I'm kind of mystified and kind of stumbling on what has changed so significantly that your policy already doesn't protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica?
Good evening, Board of Trustees. My name is Veronica Lascano, and I'm a member of the League of United Latin American Citizens of San Benito County. And Cesar Flores, our president, sends his apologies since he wasn't able to attend this evening. He actually called me 10 minutes before 7, letting me know that he wasn't going to be able to make it this evening. And so I left whatever I was doing, helping my daughter study for her math test tomorrow, so hopefully she does well. Because this topic is extremely important, not only to me, but to the community of San Benito County. And over the last 30 years, San Benito LULAC has worked with a lot of young people in our community, and we have heard firsthand some of the fears that they have experienced as a result of being at home or the fear of attending school. I have a friend who's a teacher who actually she works with migrant families and students, and she expressed some fear from the parents on even sending their children to school. And so she basically spoke to the parent and said, no, you don't want to keep your kids, at home. You want to be able to send them to school. And the reason is because they're afraid. They're afraid to come to school. And so I think that the wonderful thing about this resolution is that it supports all students. I did see in the resolution that there's a recommendation to implement a day of understanding. And I think that that is something so wonderful because it can be all-inclusive. It's not just targeted to a specific demographic. And so I was glad to see that as part of the resolution. I really encourage the high school to include that in your annual calendar. And as a LULAC organization, we'd be happy to support something like that and work in partnership. And again, I would like to recommend that the Board of Trustees adopts the resolution as presented. Thank you for your time.
Ray?
First off, I'd like to thank the board and the administration for bringing this forward. I had a few things to say, but David, I respect you wholeheartedly. So, but you asked for a cooling off period, and I'm afraid we've gone too long. A lot of things are rolling. And as an educational institution, I would say we're in crisis if you can make yourself believe that there's one family keeping their children at home for fear of any of these reasons. And Muslims are included in here because it does mention status of ethnicity, race, religion, sexual orientation, ability, sex and gender identity, socioeconomic status or beliefs. It's pretty inclusive. I'm sure we could ask, maybe beliefs goes into political association. I can tell you I was a little disappointed because we took out reference to items that the staff could or couldn't do, as in ask about what a student's immigration status is, or ask a student in class what their sexual orientation is. I don't believe any of those things are required by law for the school to know, and I don't think any of those things should be allowed to be brought up by our staff and make a potentially unsafe situation. And again, we also have to not mix policy and resolution. There are policies, but we also have federal laws that then we clarify how they work in California with state laws, that then we clarify how they work in our district with district policies. And this resolution, more than anything else, I believe is a statement from the current board as it sits and the current administration on how you feel about this topic. Doesn't change any policy, doesn't add to, delete from. It clarifies policy and clarifies the intent of the board. And personally, I would appreciate that the board, and I have to, actually, one thing I said I was going to say, I was surprised to see safe haven on there. You know, those two words carry a little bit of risk. And so whoever put themselves out on the end of the board and threw those two words on there, you know, when I brought this forward to you guys in December, I didn't put those words on there. More power to us if we can get away from it or get away with it. And again, the resolution is all about clarifying from the board's point of view and from the administration's point of view what the district, how the district feels about the safety of all students, what some of the minor things the school is going to do, maybe major things the school is going to do to prevent that and to educate all students. I was talking to your principal in December, and he said, you know, far be it from me to try to form a student's political and maybe even in some sense moral standards that they bring from their family, although Ed Cook says we're responsible for our morals as well. Because, but we have to teach them how to interact as our own little society in a safe, respectful manner. And I think that's all this is about. And again, I would encourage adoption of this resolution as a statement to the community and to the students and to the staff, how you feel. Thanks, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here and I'm a part of the migrant program, and I represent the high school to the region, and also on the state level. And we have a lot of meetings over there, and we see this resolution in December. And for us, it's very important because our goal is to our kids go to school and just focus on the school. And political, everybody has a different point of view, but we respect that. And the only purpose for my grant is support the kids and make the kids go to school safe and reach the goal, reach the universities, and that's our purpose. And there's a lot of work, but if we work together, I think we make our community safe. You guys here, it's a really, really good group, and everybody has a different point of view, but at the end, everybody's got to be on the same page trying to protect the kids. And I think it's good for everybody to support this resolution, and thank you for everything you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more discussion from the board, or?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Okay.
The paragraph, whereas the national presidential election resulted in students and families in San Benito County expressing fear, sadness, and concerns for student safety heightened because of intolerant rhetoric made over the course of the 2016 presidential race. Everybody's hurting, right? I mean, this was the election didn't go the way people wanted it to, or a lot of people wanted it to, and there's been a tremendous amount of rhetoric, as this paragraph states. But to me, this paragraph is more rhetoric. It doesn't do anything to bring that down, and it doesn't take any step towards calming the situation. To me, that piles on, right? That paragraph in particular. And I don't think that. It's almost like when somebody apologizes to you, but says it's your fault, but I apologize, right? I mean, that to me, that doesn't fit with the rest of the document. So I've got a bit of a problem with that clause. And then in the resolve portion, where we maintain that in compliance with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement